The race gap is pronounced across schools in New York State, and a new report shows that you do not have to go too far to stumble upon the most segregated schools in the nation. They're right here in our own backyard, New York State and New York City in particular. Now, we just heard from Professor Gary Orfield, who co-authored a report about the racial divide. I want to bring this topic to our panel, and Assemblyman Mayor, you represent Yonkers. Yonkers still the hallmark case for many when it comes to school segregation and busing.
Right.
What's been your experience and the experience of your city? How effective is busing at trying to reduce some of the school segregation?
Well, I think ironically, originally busing was intended to reduce segregation within school districts. But the world has changed, and particularly in cities like Yonkers, where the number of white middle-class families choosing to send their kids to public schools has decreased markedly since I grew up there and went to public school. And now, disproportionately, it's Black and Hispanic parents, but the schools are on the east side, which was traditionally the white side of Yonkers. So they have to be bused, not solely for racial purposes, because that's where the schools are. We actually need to build the schools on the side of town where more of the students live. At the same time, we have to invest enough in our schools that white middle-class families see Yonkers as a place to come and raise their kids. So I think we've sort of morphed beyond the very traditional way of looking at busing and school desegregation. We still have elements of it, much less so because we have magnet schools and we have school choice and we have a lot of ways to achieve it. But the problem is we don't have a mixed population going to our public schools, and that was a New York City problem for many years. It's improved now with many more families choosing to send their children to public schools.
And that attempt to remedy via busing was not received well by a lot of people in Yonkers. It's still a bitter issue.
It's a bitter pill to this day, and parents of all colors object now because their children, Black and Hispanic children, are spending 45 minutes coming to the other side of town, and they are as mad as white parents used to be about their children having to travel. So there's great ill will about busing, and there's a tremendous expense associated with busing all these children in a district of 27,000 kids.
The professor linked school segregation to housing issues, and when you have homogeneous or very limited groups, particularly ethnic or racial groups within a community, some of that has to do with affordable housing and diversity of housing, and that's an issue that's come up a lot in a lot of different areas. Bill de Blasio ran on it for mayor of New York. We just had the story with Shelley Silver and the affordable housing units on the Lower East Side. Westchester is in the middle of a protracted lawsuit with the federal government. Is it a necessity, and should a government step in and say, you have to have X number of white homes, you have to have an X number of Black homes, an X number of Hispanic homes, and also disparity across financial lines and economic lines as well? Or is it just whoever moves into the area moves into the area?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you know, I'm so glad you're doing this. The report itself, if people get a chance to look at it, is shocking when you look at it. They're talking about this now as returning us to pre-Brown days. It's 1954 when we get the Brown decision, and the segregation, which in the report they describe as apartheid in New York State, across New York State, not just downstate, but upstate as well, is shocking. And so it's really important issue to talk about. You're absolutely right. Housing is intimately connected to it, but they also make the case in terms of remedies. We live in the tri-state area. You look at our neighboring states, Connecticut. Connecticut has addressed or begin to address some of these issues in ways that New York State hasn't even begun to entertain. And these are issues New York has dealt with. This isn't a surprise. This isn't something that just cropped up and people say, oh, wow, we're living with segregated schools. Education in the state has been problematic for so long. And we have states in our area that have been dealing with this, and Connecticut being a prime example. We have adopted none of those policies. So there are remedies. Housing certainly is one remedy. There's other remedies as well, but New York has not addressed those. Now, you know, you're right, Bill de Blasio talked about it, Governor Cuomo has talked about it, but real solutions have not been addressed, you know, either. You know, I'm from New Rochelle, the Assemblywoman is from Yonkers. New Rochelle has dealt with segregation issues for a long time. They ended up closing the high school. Their answer to desegregate was, okay, we're going to put everybody in one high school, and that was the answer. Well, that's an answer. It's not particularly satisfying to many people, but there are resolutions that you can talk about.
I know you got to take a break. I'm going to make this real quick. I think that the four of us, they could have saved a lot of money on the study. The four of us could have told them the results of this study before they actually went ahead and did it. It's funny, Professor, you referred to South Africa in your response, because in many ways, Andrew, the school system of New York City, having been to South Africa several times, reminds me of exactly that. Not the same financial condition, but when you look at the race of the students in the classroom, I graduated from Theodore Roosevelt High School on Fordham Road in the Bronx, not far from Yonkers, and it was all black and Latino, in 1982. So I know you've got to take a break, but
there's a difference, and that's what one of the difficult layers in all this, because you talk about Jim Crow South, or you talk about South Africa, and that was by government edict. That was the law that you had to be separated.
Funny, Andrew?
This is economic law maybe being applied.
But you know what's funny? Recently, I've been to Mississippi, I've been to Idaho, and I've been to Louisiana. And it seems like they do a better job of integrating their students than we do in New York City, in New York State.
Music means the conversation is over, but I'm sure this is something that we're going to revisit in the coming weeks and months. Up next, the Empire State budget battle begins to wind down. We'll have a look at the new developments out of Albany, where legislators are nearing a budget deal. Well, most legislators are nearing a budget deal. We'll tell you what this could mean for charter schools. Also, the NYPD names the man who manned up to take a controversial post. We're going to introduce you to the NYPD's new Inspector General next.